Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something that is a little controversial, and that is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. To start this off, I'm going to say right now that I have a lot of opinions on this book, and I do not have infinite knowledge about it, but I definitely have more than the average person. Oh, Copper is sneezing. She sneezed all over my computer. Are you gonna sneeze again? Oh my gosh, I wish you guys could see this. That was disgusting. I have to wash my pillow now. Thanks, Copper. So for context, I thought I would start this video off by talking about my own personal timeline with Lolita and My Dark Vanessa. My first introduction to all of this was I read My Dark Vanessa in 2022 at summer camp, which is crazy now that I think about it. I didn't really know what it was about. I just knew that it was a very popular book at the time, and I wanted to see how it would go. It deeply impacted me. It scarred me. And then because of My Dark Vanessa, I'd heard about Lolita before, obviously, but I decided to take a class on the book. The class was marketed that it was going to be about the book. It ended up turning out to be more about the writer himself, Vladimir Nabokov. Vladimir Nabokov. Why does it not sound right in my mouth today? I don't know. Nabokov. Nabokov. That's how my professor would say it. Anyway, I've gotten off track already. What was I saying? We read about 4 or 5 of his novels, including his autobiography. We read Despair, we read Invitation to a Beheading, which is really similar to Kafka's The Trial. I'm missing one. Can't remember it. I've had my fair share of Nabokov shoved down my throat at this point, so I feel confident enough to talk about him as a writer. So, what is the point of this video? The point of this video is, if you think you want to read Lolita, I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know going into this book, because Jesus Christ, does it have some lore around it, okay? It is absolutely insane, and I feel like the general population does not know about all of the stuff surrounding this book, so I'm gonna get into it for y'all. Okay, so My Dark Vanessa is set in the present day, while Lolita is set in 1950, which is around the time that Nabokov wrote it. In this book, we focus on Vanessa, the main character, as she tells the story of her time at boarding school where she had a relationship with her English teacher. The POV goes back and forth between her as an adult and her as a child. I believe she is 14 or 15 in this book, if I'm remembering correctly. And basically, you get the idea that this relationship has impacted her throughout her entire life. Even as an adult, she's still talking to this teacher, and it has had a huge impact on her and her personality and her entire life. It is deeply disturbing, really hard read. I was just like, my jaw was on the ground the entire time. It made me understand, because I've never been in a situation like this, it made me understand rape and like sexual abuse in a light that I had never conceived of it before, which is that from Vanessa's point of view, as the writer writes it, she was an active participant in this relationship. But the question becomes, when we compare it with Lolita, how much of that is true? Lolita is told not from Lolita's perspective, but from Humbert, who is our main character. He completely drives the novel. So he has his first wife, whom, when they divorce, he moves to America because he can no longer control the urges that he has, and he wants to start over because his uncle has some money there, blah, 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 blah. So he ends up moving in with a mother and her daughter, and starts a relationship with the daughter, who is Dolores Hayes, when she is 12 years old, I think. Might correct me on that. Either way, she's not as old as Vanessa is in My Dark Vanessa. I believe she's like 14 or 15. And without spoiling too much, they eventually get away from Dolores's mother and take a road trip across America, and that is where things just really, really go to hell. So obviously there exists a clear relationship between these books. But if you read the author's essay in Lolita and the Afterlife, which is a collection of stories and talks and etc., on Lolita and its effects because it has permeated pop culture. Think Lana Del Rey, think The Police, their song Close to Me or something like that. But what I was gonna say is that if you read her essay in Lolita in the Afterlife, which is called Maison Nymphette, you will understand that Kate Elizabeth Russell was very involved in what is called nymphette culture online, I guess in the early 2000s. So she was part of this group of girls who basically identify with Lolita after reading the book, model themselves after her, and the ways that Humbert describes her. I am not going to even go into all of that because it is honestly just so much. Anyway, I highly recommend reading that essay if you can get your hands on it, Maison Nymphette in Lolita in the Afterlife, because it brings a whole new light to my Dark Vanessa as well as Lolita. My next section is going to be called What Makes Me Sick? What makes me absolutely ill about these two books? Let's start with the thing that my friends who were in this class with me have heard me talk about the most, and it is this goddamn quote right here by Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair says that Lolita is the only convincing love story of our century. Oh my gosh. The fact that this quote is printed on this book from whenever this was printed, 2011, why the absolute fuck is it still being marketed as a love story in 2011? What? Like, why would you keep this printed on the back of it? Why? Literally why? I don't understand. Because of things like this, because of quotes like this that remain on the back of this book that was printed after 2010, people still have misconceptions about what Lolita is, what type of story this is, and you know what makes me really fucking mad? It's because that is what the narrator wants you to believe. Humbert. As I see it, the whole point of this book is it is a psychological battle between the reader and Humbert of who is getting the real scoop on what the fuck happened with this girl. Humbert is trying to deceive you. And Vladimir Nabokov, I believe he was really having a grand old time writing this book, knowing that putting a bag over the reader's head. We know from Nabokov's other books that he loves for the reader to be an active participant in his books. He wants you to basically act like a detective. You are the detective trying to figure out what is really going on behind the scenes. And you know, that's not a new tactic in a murder mystery. It's kind of like the same deal, like you're trying to figure out who actually done it. You know what I'm saying? I think what really pisses me off is that the subject matter is obviously so terrible. Like, we're talking about pedophilia and rape, and it has been made into like a murder mystery game because of Humbert's voice. And by some points, I guess that's realistic because people like Humbert, sociopaths, are often very, very good with their words, very good at concealing their desires, their personalities. Think Ted Bundy, all of that bullshit. He was very charming. Apparently, Humbert, it's the same fucking deal. But the problem becomes so exacerbated because in the movie adaptations that millions of people have seen, Lolita is presented as a fucking love story. Even in the Kubrick movie adaptation, there are moments when it gets really messy and it gets really unclear if Lolita wants this or if she doesn't. The next thing that gets me really, really angry is when people misread the ending. At the ending of the novel, without spoiling anything, Humbert basically just declares to the reader that it really was love after all with Lolita, with Dolores. He really did love her, which coming from, you know, a freak like him, I guess could make the reader feel some type of way, feel like this is a grand love story that is the love story of our century, whatever, some bullshit like that. But if you actually read between the lines, like how about page 284, Humbert says this, which changes everything for me. You know what's so dreadful about dying? This is what Lolita says. You know what's so dreadful about dying is that you're completely on your own, she said. And it struck me as my Ottoman knees went up and down that I simply did not know a thing about my darling's mind, and that quite possibly, behind the awful juvenile cliches, there was in her a garden and a twilight and a palace gate, dim and adorable regions which happened to be lucidly and absolutely forbidden to me in my polluted rags and miserable convulsions. Okay, there's another part that I want to read. Hold on. The final image of the book is this. Reader, what I heard was but the melody of children at play, nothing but that, and so limpid was the air that within this vapor of blended voices, majestic and minute, remotely and magical near, frank and divinely enigmatic, one could hear now and then, as if released, an almost articulate spurt of vivid laughter. ... And then I knew that the hopelessly poignant thing was not Lolita's absence from my side, but the absence of her voice from that concord. At this or that twist of it, I feel my slippery self eluding me, gliding into deeper and darker waters than I care to probe. So, what I get from those quotes, in the context of the larger plot and the larger story, is that Humbert, at the end of the novel, realizes that he has done wrong. Sitting on that hillside and looking down into the town and hearing the cries of the children, he realizes that Lolita should be with them, that he never should have taken her from her mother, that he should never, and he doesn't exactly say this, but you get the feeling that he wishes he had never done any of this at all, that he feels remorse for what he has done to Lolita, and that she is a person with her own mind, with which he describes as a garden, that he cannot access and that he will never access. So Humbert repents, and a lot of people read right over that, don't get it, continue to think of Lolita as a tragic love story. Like many readers of Lolita, I feel that there is a gap, there is a hole, and you know what that hole is? Lolita's voice, her narrative, Dolores Hayes' opinion on everything that has transpired. And you know where we get that? My Dark Vanessa. I believe, my theory is that this book is written in order to fill the gap that Humbert's narrative leaves. Okay, now we're heading into the part of the video I will call What Makes Me Sick, Part 2. And this is in concerns to My Dark Vanessa. Number one, what makes me absolutely ill is that Kate Elizabeth Russell was basically forced by her publisher or somebody else, I don't know who she was forced by, to make a statement at the front of the book in the prologue or whatever, saying she basically has to repeat for the public that none of this actually happened to her. This is a work of fiction. Please don't read into this. Yes, there are similarities between the timeline of my life and what happens in this book, but none of this happened to me. But then we turn to her dedication, which says, for the real life Dolores Hayes and Vanessa's wives whose stories have not been yet heard, believed, or understood. Do you see Nabokov having to do any of that? There have been many accusations over the years that Nabokov is a pedophile because, you know, how could he have written this if he doesn't understand what it feels like, blah, 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 blah. And I see the merit of those arguments. Boy, do I see the merit of those arguments. It just strikes me as super misogynistic that she has to go and make these statements about her personal life in a work of fiction. And this man... This man has been getting away with this shit for fucking 70 years. Doesn't have to make excuses to fucking anyone. Pisses me off. The next thing that makes me absolutely ill is that this book was pushed by William & Morrow, imprint of HarperCollins, and it sold very, very well. You know what didn't sell well? Excavation, the 2014 memoir by Wendy Oritz, which is extremely similar, besides the fact that that was a memoir and this is a work of fiction. Wendy Oritz is a POC author whose work, in my opinion, has been radically overlooked in the wake of stuff like My Dark Vanessa. Basically, she was upset that something like this could go so big while her memoir is being overlooked when they tackle theoretically the same content, the same bullshit, basically. The publishing industry is whitewashed. We've known that. We've been know that. It just still makes me ill to think about it. So go read that memoir if you haven't, because Wendy Oritz has been doing it. She's still doing it. And it sucks that this was picked up and that was not, when they tackle basically the same thing. Maybe Wendy Oritz's memoir could have been a bestseller like My Dark Vanessa. We'll never know. Check out this article at Vox for a better understanding of what I'm talking about. My concluding thoughts. Read this book with caution. Good Lord, read this book with caution and read it slowly. Take it in Look up the French of what he's saying, because sometimes that reveals a lot, what he's saying in French. And then do not read Lolita without reading My Dark Vanessa. They are companions. In my opinion, and I know this is a strong and probably biased opinion, you should not read Lolita without My Dark Vanessa because it gives Lolita's voice, which is absolutely and completely missing from this novel. Okay, and my very last point. Is Lolita worth your time? I have friends who were in this class with me who wish they had never read this book, wish they had never picked this up, don't want anything to do with it after all of the bullshit that comes with it. In my opinion, I think that the fact of the matter is we are living in the after effects of this novel. It has changed the world, it has changed pop culture, whether you like it or not. Personally, I think we should all try to understand what the fuck this book is about, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and I think that's all I have to say. If you made it to the end of this video, congratulations. I know I just went on a really big rant, and it was honestly probably a hard watch. But if you're still here, thank you for being here. Like and subscribe. I have obviously a lot of feelings about this book. I have a lot of feelings about other books as well. So if you want to see me go on more rants like this, talk about literature, talk about whatever, tune in. Okay, thanks for listening, guys. Bye.